States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For all.
Okay, so let me welcome everyone to the April meeting of the Union Township Planning Commission. And having completed Pledge of Allegiance, we'll have roll call, please.
Bradshaw.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Hayes.
Here.
Lapp.
Here.
McDonald. Here. Olver.
Present.
Shingles.
Present.
Quadrito.
Here.
Aaron.
Here.
All right, we have full house.
Okay, everyone's here. Welcome, everybody. So next item is approval of tonight's agenda. So you have tonight's agenda in front of you. We have a presentation, usual reports, 2 new business items and 1 other business item. I guess 2 other business items, but is there anything else that anyone's aware of that needs to be on tonight's agenda? Are there any concerns with tonight's agenda?
Move to approve.
Second.
So, motion by Olver, second by Hayes to approve tonight's agenda as was prepared. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so our agenda is approved. Next item is the minutes. We last met on March 18th. So you have the March 18th minutes beginning on page 4 of the packet. Are there any corrections to the March minutes?
Under the approval of agenda and approval of minutes, it should be 7 ayes, since there were 7 of us last time.
Well, actually, I think 8 is right, because I think under roll call, weren't you here?
No,
Oh,
I
you-
don't think
I
Commissioner
wasn't here.
McDonald was not here. I was here.
Yeah, you were here,
I wasn't.
but you're not listed.
Oh, and I
Oh,
missed it.
maybe that's it.
That's what I'm saying.
So maybe I was invisible. I don't know.
No.
I was here.
So we
But
need to
they-
add shingles. If
we
the
were,
numbers
we
were
were,
okay
we
then,
were
okay.
8, yes, the numbers
I
are
didn't see
correct.
that.
Sorry.
Yeah, please add shingles as present under roll call.
Tara, did you forget about me?
I don't know. Let me look at all of our other motions if you're in there.
He's in the first one.
He did move the first item of new business.
Looks like he's in all the other ones.
Jeez.
Dan is that.
Shows you how irrelevant I am, huh?
Well, the thing about it is, in my social media scrolls, about every other frame is, what is shingles? And I always think about you.
I can tell you what it is. It's a very painful disease.
Yeah. Well, not to get too nitpicky, but starting on page it's page 3 of the minutes, page 6 of the packet. Under when we were doing the roll call votes, okay. Well, actually, I noticed one more thing just now. So at the top of page, the 3rd page of the minutes, you added an S to Olver, so that should just be Olver singular, because there's only one of him here right now.
I do tend to speak on behalf of my family, but I think he's right in this case.
Where was that one at?
So it's,
Oh, I see it.
yeah. But then also, starting here and every other roll call after this, nays is just N-A-Y-S. You added an E.
Isn't it fun?
I blame Hayes for that, because he's got an E, and you're kind of trying to match it.
All your
I
fault,
think.
John.
Well,
Jeez,
and
man.
John has an E, so I added these to everything.
Yeah, but so also on page 7 or the page 4 of the minutes, same thing.
Maybe they changed their mind and said, nah, yes.
Well, she didn't
Thank you,
attempt
Everett.
she didn't attempt to capture the she didn't attempt to capture the I versus yes battle that we had. So I figure that's probably a plus.
Sorry, Tom. Tough crowd.
It is. It's the story of my life.
Anything
I
else
thought it
on the
was funny.
minutes? I mean, content-wise, I thought they were, I mean, they were the usual thorough and accurate minutes.
Move to approve with the noted changes?
Second.
Okay, so motion by Olver with second by Bradshaw to approve the minutes with the minor corrections as stated. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so minutes are approved. Next item is correspondence, board reports, and presentations. And as I mentioned, we do have a special presentation tonight by Amanda Brake, proposal for Maslow's Village Tiny Homes as transitional housing support for the homeless.
Oh,
I feel very honored to be here tonight with you and representing such an incredible organization. Thank you so much for having us, and you now have 2 presentations, so you are all stacked up and ready to go. I was here last week presenting to the trustees, so thank you, like I said, for allowing me to present to you this evening. I would like to start by saying this is not a comprehensive, in-depth, detailed proposal. This is just a hello, this is who we are. On April 23rd, we do have a meeting with our build and zoning group that we've created for our tiny homes project, and then we'll be presenting the PUD planning.
just a quick question. Is it possible to bring the presentation up on the other screen?
The TV is broke.
Oh, okay. Well, I can do this. Sorry.
I did print them out as well for you, if that's easier. So this is a list of some of the nonprofit organizations that we are in cooperation with for our tiny home village. There's a total of 34 nonprofit organizations providing services to the folks in the village. The build team that we have has been assembled with OHM Advisors, GI Tech, Central Realtors, Environmental Consulting Solutions, and Alliance Architects. Based on HUD's housing standard, no one should pay more than 30% of their income on rent plus 10% in utilities, so a total of 40% of their income on their housing. In Isabella County, 51% of our renters are paying significantly more than the 30% in their rents. We have about 40% of the citizens in the United States that would qualify for some form of housing assistance. However, of that 40%, only 16% of the population actually receives housing assistance. It is projected to become significantly less than the 16% based on current budgeting. At this moment, MISHDA has paused their voucher issuances, as have most housing commissions. The housing commissions that do have open wait lists are not issuing for the foreseeable future. This is a look at our map, so you can see there's a lot of red areas, so a lot of folks are needing assistance with housing. And I think that this is a really interesting number for Isabella County. So this is based on the 2022 community study done by ACAP. It shows that 4.2% of Isabella County residents are currently unemployed. However, we have a poverty income report of 23.78%. Isabella County is the highest per cap in poverty rate for the state of Michigan, according to the Michigan Poverty Task Force 2023 report. ICRH is currently the only homeless shelter that we have in all of Isabella County with a maximum capacity of 29 individuals, and there are 560 homeless individuals in Isabella County per our last pit count, so quite in time. The Mount Pleasant Housing Commission, which is the only housing commission in Isabella County, currently has 237 families on our wait list. I probably forgot to mention, I work at the Housing Commission here in Mount Pleasant. We have approximately 20 applications that come in per day, so you can imagine that we're quite busy there. The definition of homelessness is that of individuals who lack fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence, which includes one of the following: a place not meant for human habitation, which means that they don't have utilities accessible, or living in a shelter, hotel, or motel paid and assisted by an organization. The definition of nearly homeless is folks that are underhoused, couch surfing, or illegal tenancy. So we decided to do something about this. On December 6th of 2021, at the inspiration of the community church, we came together, 14 nonprofit agencies, and held a conversation titled Conversations on Homelessness. The Mount Pleasant the Mount Pleasant Transitions Committee was created on that date. On May 3rd of 2022, the Tiny Homes Committee held their first official meeting. At that point, I said, give us a year and we'll be up and running. However, it takes a lot to build a village. The Transitions Committee was led by Annie Sanders, the President and CEO of United Way for Gratiot and Isabella County, Dee Oberachek, who's the Executive Director of ICRH, and myself. Currently, our Tiny Homes Committee consists of the community members that belong to Community Mental Health, Summit Clubhouse, Community Church, Habitat for Humanity, Isabella Citizens for Health, GI Tech, Shelter House, and Listening Ear. The Transitions Committee went on to establish 3 other smaller committees. Those committees consisted of Landlord Relations, Mentors for Continued Success, and Increasing the Affordable Housing Stock. Our mission at Maslow's Tiny Village is to fulfill the most basic need of shelter with affordable tiny living while providing the tools and support for members to excel. We do have preferences for our programming, and those are veterans, foster youth that have aged out of the foster care system, elderly and disabled folks, and our phase 2 will be single parents. Just a few statistics because I obviously love my numbers. There are 456 Michigan homeless veterans. The national percentage of homeless population is 12.9%. Foster youth that have aged out of the foster care system are generally 40% homeless by the age of 21, 20% immediately at the age of 18. And they make up 50% of the entirety of the homeless population. Single parents have an 85% likelihood of becoming homeless during their parenting. We named it Maslow's because we were focused on the hierarchy of needs. The bottom 2 foundational needs in the pyramid are physiological and safety, and we know that this village can satisfy those needs to creating personal success. We have 2 different homes that we're wanting to put on the village. Phase 1 is 40 micro houses. These are single and dual dwelling units, approximately 120 square foot. The average cost for the shell is around $2,500, estimated after putting heat, air conditioning, sink, multifunction toilet, and insulation with electric at around $5,000. Comparable builds are the pods that you may have seen a few other tiny house villages creating. Those pods are about $20,000 and they come without a toilet or a sink, so no water functioning in those buildings. The durability of both is approximately 10 years. These are the conceptual renderings. We had consulted with a former GI Tech instructor, Erin Kettmiller. Erin has worked on several different tiny home organizations, including zoning, a national tiny homes relation board, and now we have our fabulous Megan Williams, who is collaborating with CMU interior design students on our draw. The Micro House on Wheels, which will be a micro of the micro, will be available for folks at the end of this semester, so people will be able to actually go into our Micro on Wheels, see what it is that we're talking about facilitating. Phase 2 will be the actual tiny homes, which are approximately 4 bed, a max potential of 8 people. The family style shed is kind of what we use to describe this home because you've seen probably on HGTV. They have a lot of let's convert a shed. We're not converting sheds. These are real builds, but it's a pretty good concept for you to understand what we're talking about here. Family homes will be equipped, of course, with a small kitchen, bathroom, electric, heat, air conditioning. The average cost for the shell can range between $9,000 and $16,000, depending on where we are in our inflation and price structuring for build costs. Estimated after the additions would be approximately $20,000. So we're talking about a total of 50 homes on the entirety of the property. If we were to build apartments without worrying about purchasing a property, doing all of the zoning, or any of the utility installation, a modest estimate would be $4.3 million. The standard tiny home is approximately 550 square feet, which is reported to take 17% of single-family dwellings utilities. Ours, with the micro, are only 120 square feet, so you can imagine the difference in the consumption. Our goal is to lessen the carbon footprint, create an affordable construction, and decrease the transmission of pests and diseases. We have consulted with our partners who work through DV as well as homeless shelters to make sure that our build is trauma-informed. You can see some of the features of what we're trying to accomplish with a communal-style bathhouse and kitchen and garden. We are looking at affordable program payment agreements, so much like the shelter agreements. All the folks that are involved in the housing in the village will be paying a portion on that program. The mailing address is one of the key things that we focus on often when we're talking to folks in the community. The important thing about a mailing address is that you cannot gain employment, education, healthcare, Social Security or disability benefits. You can't even get on a wait list for housing assistance without an address. And so we want to make sure that our folks have all of the assets and utilities that they need in order to create that success for themselves and their families. We are talking about a gated property. There will be security and locking doors. The doors themselves will lock. If you have spoken to anyone that has been through homelessness, there's a lot of trauma when it comes to that. And a lot of their possessions are often taken from them. This gives them the security that their belongings are safe and that they can heal. And that is our number one goal. Minimal materials will lessen the cost for us to be able to establish our community. We are looking into alternative energy sources such as solar, which is being done by the Detroit Tiny Homes Village, but that is a plan for the future. The recipients must be referred by a partnering nonprofit agency, so when they come into the village, we are not taking direct applications. They are coming in with a plan for their personal success. They've been assessed by a nonprofit agency that is looking through what are the causes that have led us to this homeless situation, and how can we make sure that those things are not repeated in the future. The wraparound services will include things like financial literacy, healthcare, employment training, education, whatever it is that they need, very much like the Salvation Army's Pathways of Hope, case management. Our goal is independence, healing, and long-term self-sufficiency. It's estimated that a community saves approximately $40,000 per year on incarceration and medical costs per homeless individual, according to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, when there is some form of shelter being provided. Transitional housing has an 86% success rate in ending homelessness, according to HUD. The majority of the Housing First studies have found that transitional housing that is more stable than a congregate shelter, not adequate for long-term residency, is the key to unlocking the door to long-term self-sufficiency. There are many sustainable business models for the tiny home projects. We are currently working under the guidance of the state of Michigan's campaign to end homelessness for accessible building plans. There are over 800 tiny home villages in the United States with over 10,000 tiny homes nationwide. So we're not reinventing the wheel, we're just creating successful programming with these villages. Here are a few of my favorite examples of tiny home villages. In the top left-hand corner, you'll see Nicholsville Union in Seattle, Washington. They currently have 700 homes. They're in partnership with their local government. They have democratic rules, so the members actually volunteer for the cleaning and the safety. Next to that, you'll see Cottages at Hickory Crossing. This one is specifically created to service our veterans. It's a beautiful design. They have a very tight-knit community. They offer medical treatment and reintegration services. Right underneath that, you'll see Square One Villages in Eugene, Oregon. They currently have 6 villages. And the high school students, through their tech department, are the ones that both create and build these tiny houses. And then next to that, on the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see Community First in East Austin, Texas. I had the privilege of visiting them actually in April of 2023. It was an incredible experience. They have 51 acres, 500 tiny homes. They have gardens. They have a store with art and homemade tools, and also an Airbnb. So if you get a chance, they have somewhere you can stay while you're visiting. The Low Income Housing Institute is just an incredible example of folks that really want to help and do good in their community. We spoke with them on the phone in October of 2024. Matthew, their senior construction project manager, shared some of the designs that they have, the code of conduct, and the list of figures for their build. You can see that they have diversified their portfolio in creating both tiny homes villages. They run apartments, they have single family homes, and they also assist their local housing commission in helping folks that are on the Section 8 voucher find their stable housing. Pretty great. So Tiny Solutions, Homelessness, Healthcare, and the Tiny Home Movement in the American Midwest is a paper that was written by a college student last year. In that paper, he published that 100% of the organizations that create tiny homes are nonprofits, 60% are faith-based, 30% are specifically for veterans, and 40% are specifically for folks that are chronically homeless. One of the best set of numbers, I think, that reflects an average of transitional housing is that about 3 to 6 months is 33% of the folks that live in that transitional housing. Then you've got folks that are between 1 and 1.5 years, looking at about 17%, and then those that are above a year and a half are at about 50%. Our estimation is that there will be a 2-year max. We don't cut things off completely, because if someone is just at that edge of creating that, personal success, we're not going to say out you go. But the idea is that approximately 2 years would be the maximum for most of our visitors. You can see some of the logos for the tiny homes that are both in Michigan and Ohio. They are in various stages of creation and establishment. Some of them have been around for a little while. Some of them are just working on their startup. So there are approximately 36 tiny home villages, minus Maslow's tiny homes, in the Midwest that's represented there. Our current building efforts are focused on this particular plot of land. It is close to employment, grocery, business routes. They actually already have a bus route that is set up for this particular property. We've had an environmental survey, phase 1, completed, and we have done the topographical survey. We're entering our contract with OHM. There are 13 acres, 50 plain tiny houses. And these are some of the conceptual drawings and creations that we've had from the GI Tech students. Kind of what that village will look like. Phase 3 is the Isabella County Community Center. Our goal is to allow folks throughout all of Isabella to be able to access the services that the villagers are able to access as well. With a group of 34 nonprofit organizations, sometimes if you're looking for assistance, you're traveling all over town, here, there, and everywhere, just crisscrossing paths, filling out multiple applications. Sometimes those applications are incredibly burdensome and confusing. We want to make sure that folks have the ability to fill out those applications for education, for assistance, whatever it is that they need in Isabella County. We want to establish a place for them to be able to come, kind of like a one-stop shop. We also would like for this to be a meeting place. It's my understanding that a lot of our local nonprofits are renting out smaller offices in different facilities to make themselves accessible to our general public. We want to make sure people know where the home is for these service provisions. And also we have contacted different organizations that would like to do certification classes. For example, the Child Care Coalition, they do certification for folks to do child care, which we have a great need for in our area. So being able to have that place where we could hold those classes and allow folks to know what days and times they can come and sign up, I think will be incredibly beneficial to our community. This is just a small list of some of our contributors. We currently have 28 tiny home piggy banks all throughout town. Huggy Bear and Pickard Street Sicko have been phenomenal in their fundraising efforts. Every time we go to pick up for the tiny bank, they are full. They're really excited about the Micro on Wheels and displaying that and having more community involvement. I do want to say a huge thank you to Cleaning Solutions, who are currently working on classes for cleaning and sanitation for the folks that live in the village, should they need that assistance. And also Dr. Zavar and the colleagues at Prism Real Estate, who have offered a 10% return on the purchase price for us to use towards the build of the tiny homes. We are in conversation with consumers and DTE for grants for funding and for heating and cooling. We currently have established a fiscal sponsorship agreement with United Way for our 501c3. They take all the money, they do all the reporting, they create all the transparency, and that's a little plug for our donations for our tiny homes, our texts, our email, our Facebook, all of the ways that you can possibly contact us. So thank you so much for having me here tonight. I have brought OHM with me as well for the super technical questions. I am not an engineer and I am not an architect. I am a houser. So if you have any questions, I am more than happy to take them. And you know, my favorite part of all of this is the conversation. So please let me know what you got.
Thank you first for all the work you've done with this. I know this is a long time coming. I was very happy to see when you guys got that most recent grant funding that came through for, was it 1.1 million?
1.1 was the entirety of the rural prosperity, so we got 35,000.
So how are you guys doing when it comes to funding now, when it looking at?
So we are unable to apply for any grants specifically for the purchase of the property until the zoning is done. All of those grants require that we have a purchase by date, and the only way that we can assure when that purchase will be is to have that zoning completed.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't catch what the proposed location is.
So it's right there on the corner of Jennifer and Jeffrey Lane, right there behind Hunter's Ale House.
Thank you.
I'm talking about just the different demographics you're looking to serve. First, veterans, foster youth, elderly, and single. Do you guys have an idea now, just looking at the current homeless population, kind of who fits in that demographic? I mean, they're all groups that really need big help, you know? Mm-hmm. You can see it when you're out and about. I remember walking around and seeing, you don't have to go deep into the parks in our district to see the people that are out there struggling, trying to survive. I guess I'm just wondering, like, when you see this envisioning, like, what, regardless of the preferences, where do you think this will be serving most? Do you think it'll be serving single parents, veterans? Are there enough veterans out there that you might find yourself with the majority of these spots filled up by maybe just one type of demographic?
I would say that with 50% of the homeless population involving kiddos that have aged out of the foster care system, that there is a strong likelihood that there will be a good portion. I think probably second would be the elderly disabled working in the Housing Commission. Those four specific preferences are the majority of the folks that we see applying that need assistance.
So this is kind of based around what you guys are already seeing in the community now. Oh, great, thank you.
So just in looking at the renderings that you have here, which I know are not set in stone, with elderly and disabled as a big demographic, are you really focusing on accessibility? Because when I'm looking at the pictures, it doesn't, I have a very close family member that uses a wheelchair every day, and it's easy to overlook things unless you're with someone all the time. that needs those things to be correct for accessibility. So as I'm looking at the pictures, I'm just kind of like, eh. But are those just examples, what you're really focusing on? Okay, good.
So those are just examples. We
Right.
do have Friends with Disability Network that'll obviously be consulted
Okay.
when we do our last renderings. And also being that I work at the high rise downtown,
Right.
you know, the folks that we service are always elderly and disabled there. And so consideration for their special needs, most especially in the drawing and in planning would be a top priority
Okay.
for sure.
Good, because as a lot of people probably don't realize, ADA doesn't always mean easy or accessible. It's the bare minimum. So
Yeah.
when something's created specifically to help people in that demographic, you need to be able to utilize it. So thank you.
100% agree.
So one of the things you said was that recipients have to be referred by a partnering agency. So how does that work exactly? How does someone who is in this situation get introduced into this program?
So our goal is very specifically to serve Isabella County.
Mhm.
The majority of the folks that are currently homeless have some sort of touch base with a nonprofit organization that we have
Okay.
here in town.
Good.
And so we would make sure that, you know, those folks. I all the time get phone calls from the nonprofit organizations at the Housing Commission. Do you have anything available? Do you know anyone that has something available? And what I did make sure to also express to the trustees is that because I work in the Housing Commission, I have a little special kind of carved out area in that when we think about how long it takes for folks to go from transitional housing into stable housing, I have all those contacts, right? I
Right.
know all the housing commissions here in the state of Michigan that have availability or a little or no wait for their public housing. So even though we're not currently issuing vouchers, the availability for the public housing is still there.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You talked a little bit about there would be a cap for residents, what their structure. I guess I wanted a little more info on like what the structure would be for people that are referred in. What are their type of payments that they're looking for to be able to be? Because I know like right now, I mean, housing is so hard to come by. There's a lot of people that are housed, but like very, in a very precarious way, or being able to, maybe pay their rent, but not pay for the needs they have on a day-to-day basis. I guess I'm just wondering, like, what type of financial cost is coming to the residents that are being served there versus what's going to be able to be covered by grants and other things that are coming in from the private sector.
We're definitely not charging rents.
Is it like a percentage of benefits?
Rents to the general
Okay.
public because that's kind of an understandable concept, but it's actually programming fees. So they'll be contributing back into the village, very similar to what the income rates look like for HUD. So with HUD, if you're a participant in the program, you pay a minimum of $50. And then as your income goes up, so does your contribution to the programming. And so we will very similarly be looking at a system like that. We will be setting aside a portion of that money that they're paying in to go to their moving costs for their future home. So security deposits and first month's rent, things like that.
That's great. Thank you. Appreciate that. I appreciate a little clarity in that
Yeah.
thing there.
That's what I'm here for. This is my favorite part. So please, any questions you have, I'm happy to answer.
Well, obviously, you mentioned meeting with the trustees, and now you're here with the planning commission. Ideally, what would be your timeline from start to finish before this would be realized?
Yesterday.
Yesterday. Okay.
I am very well aware that this process can take between 6 and 12 months. I'm hoping that with the stellar team that we have assembled, that are going to be working with us through the PUD process, that we're not going to be looking at the 12-month, but more closer to the 6-month. That is definitely the goal.
Okay, thank you.
The building that you, I believe, said was intended to be a community center, that's currently, it was a medical building, medical offices. Is it vacant?
Half of it, well, let me take that back. Half of it has been occupied for a very long time since this establishment,
Mhm.
and the partners are now doing, I think, 2 or 3 times a week. The other doctor is having appointments in the other side of the building at this point.
Okay, but the plan is to purchase the building or have it be part of the complex?
Eventually,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
That's an expensive purchase, and we know that this is going to be successful, and it's important to make sure that the community sees that success before purchasing an additional portion to this programming.
Mm-hmm. Other questions?
You know, I have one last one.
You
You
can
talked a
have
little bit.
five.
No, that's okay. You talked a little bit about how I think with any type of development like this, it is how do you connect this new development coming in with the rest of the community there. You also talked a bit about how security, I guess, and priority of the possessions. Is it so it's envisioned as a closed gated community over the 15 acres, like from end to end, or gating around the housings?
Gating
Area-
specifically around the housing
Gating
area.
specifically around the housing while the
We,
grounds would be open?
so if you look at the property, if you're looking head on, I am terrible with street names, so forgive me for taking a sneak peek at my road there. On Isabella Road, if you were looking directly at the property, there's kind of a little wild tree area. So we envision something like a community garden that all participants in Isabella County can come to, can get vegetables and fruit and interact with our larger community, as well as the folks that are in the village.
Oh, great. Yeah, because you want to see them being able to build a community where they feel safe and feel open, but also, I guess I think of the optics of seeing people that are trying to re-enter society being fenced off.
Well, and I do want to be,
Yeah.
I want to be very clear. Early on, there was a discussion that the tiny homes would be a re-entry program. That is not what we're doing. We are taking folks that are homeless and nearly homeless, and we're making sure that they have that housing and those tools to succeed. I have great friends at Michigan Works. They are fabulous at reintegration programming, and I think that we should leave to the experts the things that they're an expert at. With us also wanting to make sure that we've got, those 10 homes for families. We want to make sure that our kiddos are also safe within those gated area.
Definitely. Thank you.
Excellent.
I guess I'll ask one more question that just occurred to me. So, one of the things you would want, I think, in any sort of residential setting like that would be convenient access to like food and things of that nature. With Kroger having closed, there's really no full-service supermarket in that part of town.
Walmart.
Well,
Aldi.
we've got
Oh,
Walmart
okay.
and
Oh, okay. Yeah, Aldi. The one.
Target.
The ones. Okay. Okay. So there is Walmart. Okay. So there is in that area within walking distance.
There's even kitty corner to the property that we're talking about in urgent care. So
Okay.
being able to get that health care that's right there. And
There's a gas
just-
station right down the road too with the Dunkin' Donuts.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to live on donuts, but
Says you.
so it's actually a good location based on the types of things that are in the area.
When we look at establishing low-income housing, for example, one of the highest scoring portions of that application is walkability. And the walkability is just incredible from this point. There's also, we need to be real about it, there is a thing called NIMBY, so not in my backyard, right? A lot of folks that are in established neighborhoods tend to not want to see something like this. Well, good news, we're in the perfect spot to not be seen as much, to offend those folks that don't want to have to visually partake. However, I think that we're going to be very pleasantly surprised at the success of this program and how much our community is going to want to take part in the activities that we have planned. As you can tell, I'm very excited about it, so.
Okay.
Thank you for your work on it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yeah. Thank you.
Super.
Thank you so much for
Been
having
a
me.
long time getting to this point. A lot
Oh
of
my
work
goodness.
getting
And
it's
I
great to be here.
am not the world's most patient person. I won't pretend that I am. So I'm just very proud of the work that my group has done to get to this point. So thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. So we'll continue with our regular kind of monthly reports. Next item is Commissioner Thering, Board of Trustees.
Yes, sir. Thank you. One of the things that we did on the April 9th, at the April 9th meeting is we had the first reading of a proposed amendment to the private road ordinance. And that was due to Mr. Nanny working with someone talking about a private road and the end turnaround. So I think right now there's more of a cul-de-sac option, and that seemed to be it. And in the conversation kind of discovered that, well, there's two other options, a Y option or a T option. So we got a chance to look at all that, and I actually am very pleased to see that, you know, Mr. Nanny and his staff, they are working with applicants and recognizing ways that we can improve and putting their best foot forward in that. So we had our first reading on that. Along with that, the Board of Trustees received an email from a school board member from the Central Christian Academy. They are looking for property to build their school. And their letter that was sent to us was a very nice letter that was thanking Mr. Nanny and his staff for being very helpful and informative in their decision making as they work towards finding a place to build their school. So I wanted to bring that up for the board to hear. Thank you, Mr. Nanny. And that was very noteworthy. So that's really, at this point, that's all I have for you.
Okay. Are there questions for Commissioner Thering on Board of Trustees related matters? Okay. Well, thanks for the update. Appreciate it. Next item, I don't know if they've met since last month, but we have Commissioner McDonald updates from ZBA.
Nothing.
Okay. And then next item is our Community and Economic Development Monthly Report that you got in your packet from Rodney. That is a compendium of everything that's going on in the township virtually. And so we always pause and give commissioners an opportunity to ask any questions that they might have on anything you might have gleaned in the monthly report. Any questions? Okay. Well, if you do have questions, you can always ask. You can always ask. Send Rodney an email or however you want to do it. Any other reports or correspondence that anyone is aware of that needs to come before us? Okay. If not, then we'll move on. So at every Planning Commission meeting, towards the beginning of the meeting, usually sooner than this, but we have a public comment section where individuals are invited to address the Planning Commission on items which are not on tonight's agenda. Meaning, if we have, like tonight, if we have a public hearing, that public hearing has its own public comment section, so this is not for that. This is if individuals want to address the Planning Commission on items that are not on tonight's agenda, they're welcome to do so at this time. We ask you to come to the podium, give us your name and address for the minutes, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. This public comment is open at 7:45.
There's nobody online.
Okay. So seeing none, we'll assume that folks are here for other purposes. There'll be an extended public comment later in the meeting. We'll go ahead and close that back up. The public comment is also closed at 7:45. So, we are ready to move on to our new business. The first item is a special use permit application for short-term rental housing at 1220 South Eli's Way. And so we'll start with an introduction from, it's going to be Peter this time, and then we'll move to the public hearing and our deliberation.
Evening Commission. So we have in the past, we had, in previous zoning ordinance, we didn't have much language on these, what we call short-term rentals. Airbnb is a popular company. So they were added in the new zoning ordinance, and it was a while until we got an application for one. With that one, we went a little bit slower with the commission because it was the first time, so we had kind of an introduction period, and then we went with the application. Since we've kind of done that, we decided we're working with an applicant here, similar kind of situation, where we became aware that they were operating and they wanted to continue to operate, and they wanted to, of course, seek approval so they could operate legally in the township. So I met with the applicants quite a few times before the application period, and making sure that their application was complete and had everything that would suffice a good application. The part that we are looking at today that we're going to focus on is the special use permit. With the special use permit, it is required to have a minor site plan, but that minor site plan is approved administratively, and so I will be approving that site plan post approval of the special use permit. However, because it is required, it is there as a guide for you in your review, so you can see how they have the site laid out and set up for the special use permit. This is the location of the property is 1220 Eli's Way. There is within your packet kind of an old survey of the property. Their property is set quite a bit off of the road, and they have a driveway that basically leads back to the property there. And so they're not directly on what you call a main road in the township. They're kind of a bit off the way there. And so as you can see on the, for example, on the site plan, site plans require showing a sidewalk. There is no sidewalk on a main road, it's just where their property actually abuts. So during the review of this application, you have the report that was done, and in it, the only sections that were found that where the applicant can conform instead of does conform, there are items that they simply can't complete at this time, such as zoning permit approval, post approval of the special use, final inspection by the rental inspector, and so on. But during the review of the application, it was found that all items conformed, both in section 14.3J and and 6.58, which is specific to the short-term rental use. And that is what we call, what is popularly known as Airbnb, and a host of other companies that now we can use for that type of use. If you have any questions for me while I'm up here with the application.
Peter, did you say this is the first application you've gotten for a B&B, or for an Airbnb, or just one that's a multi-dwelling on a single lot?
No, so this would, since we've had the new use short-term rental in the zoning ordinance, something that we actually regulate, this is the second time that we've had an application come to the planning commission.
What's the actual regulation right now that you enforce? I'm not familiar with the actual, what our limits are on Airbnbs and stuff like that.
So within the ordinance, we have Section 6.58 is what actually regulates short-term rentals. It would be in Section 3 where we have our different zoning districts, and they show you what is divided between permitted uses and special uses. And the short-term rental is listed as I believe, a special use in all of the residential districts and agricultural district.
So anyone that's thinking of operating one would need to get approval.
Yes.
You guys first. All right, great, thank you.
But provided that they meet all the conforming requirements, there's no limits to how many people could set up short-term rentals?
What do you mean by how many people?
He's talking about a per capita. In some areas you're seeing, especially like I know up in Gaylord, they've done a lot to try to limit Airbnbs because they see housing scarcity coming in. And I know it's something that's going to be preaching more on us, you know. So we just heard from a previous speaker talking about the people that are having trouble getting rents, getting housings, you know. I guess he was just wondering, is that what you were trying to say? Is there any type of cap that comes in when it comes to like how many different Airbnbs can be opened?
Yeah, right now, the ordinance does not have any caps. There are not that many units in the township. Certainly, if it became a challenge, if it became a problem, that this planning commission would be the first to be aware of that, because we would have a large increase in the number of requests. But at this point, it's not an issue. It certainly is an issue in parts of the state that are tourism oriented. Gaylord, you mentioned Traverse City is another one, and along Lake Michigan, Lakeshore, there are a number of communities that either prohibited them or severely restricted them because they're finding entire neighborhoods are becoming short-term rentals.
Is there something that we as the planning commission can do to remedy that before it becomes a problem?
Well, I'd certainly
be proactive about it.
If you wish, you could add. Amend the ordinance to add standards that limit or space them apart. For example, for group daycare homes, and this is out of the state act, for group daycare of child daycare homes, there is a provision that allows the local government to require a minimum separation between group child daycare homes that can care for up to 14 children, potentially. It requires them to be a certain distance apart, potentially. The community can also not require it. We could do something similar. That's one way to say that you have to be so far apart between them. Or we could set a cap that similar to the adult use marijuana facilities, in some, at least in the law, not in Mount Pleasant, but as things are currently, but in the law. Governments can set a cap on the number of licenses they'll grant. Similar here, we could have a cap in our ordinance that says once we reach X number of special use permits, no new one be approved unless something changes. I don't recommend it at this point. We're not seeing a rush. We're not seeing a concentration of these in any way that would concern me to suggest that I think a restriction like that is warranted right now. The other thing I will say, though, is that your special use permit standards allow you to determine whether it's appropriate to grant the special use permit. If you look at the general standards that are in your report, the third item down is the special use will be designed, constructed, operated, maintained in a manner compatible with adjacent uses, surrounding area, the intent of the zoning district. That language sometimes you see ordinances, instead of saying compatible, they say the word harmonious. The idea is if you have a proliferation of these, obviously it would not, in a neighborhood, in an area, that would not necessarily be compatible with the character of that zoning district or the character of that area as a residential community. So you have the ability on a case-by-case basis to look at that.
Okay, I was worried about that because I know that one of our responsibilities is to make sure that we approve everything that conforms with all of the ordinances and the zoning regulations as is, and you shouldn't be showing bias based on that. So, thank you.
Other questions for Peter while he's up there?
I guess just going back to these, just get a little bit more clarity going forward on these. So like, it's self-reporting when people apply for these. It's like, there's not like a, just you're saying like you're not seeing the second application we've ever had since the ordinance come in. I didn't know like necessarily what the standards are, expectations when people are like purchasing new property. Are they having to state what their use is going to be for? If someone does decide, say if someone local owns a couple houses, decides to turn two of them from rental properties into short-term rental or something like that, is there any, what's really requiring them to come forward for an application? Like what's the kind of checks, I guess, in that balance?
Well, can you share how this one came to us?
Well, and so this one came to us much like the other one where it was discovered, Airbnb that is being used. I did have one, there was a third one that was discovered, and they actually decided that they did not want to do it any longer, and they chose to not apply. It wasn't worth the hassle for them anymore, and they put it in writing and affidavit and basically that I have it that they're not doing it. So there hasn't been a huge outcry. I've even had to speak to a person looking at property. I've had people ask, can I use this for an Airbnb? And I let them know what the use is and what the process is, and haven't had anybody actually then do it, but I let them know up front that there is a process to do it.
Okay. Great, awesome, thank you.
Anything else? I mean, we can always ask more later. Okay, thank you. All right. So with that introduction, we'll move on to the public hearing. All special use permits come with a public hearing. That is the public's opportunity to address the Planning Commission on the proposed application. We want to give everybody who wants to speak an opportunity to speak. So once the public hearing is open, we'll ask people to come to the podium, give us your name and address for the minutes, and limit at least your initial comments to 3 minutes. Once everybody who's had an opportunity to speak has spoken, if someone wants to be recognized for additional comments, we will do that. Please address your comments to the Planning Commission. And so the public hearing on special use permit application 25-02 is open at 7:58.
Hi, my name is Dan Sidlecki. This is my wife Randy and our son Matthew. And first of all, I would like to apologize profusely. We were thinking that this meeting was tomorrow. So we live off of River Road, a little bit east of Meridian Road. And about 25 years ago, my wife's parents, they had problems with their health. And they didn't exactly know what to do, so we said, okay, well, let's we'll try to help them out. So what we did is we actually had a house built. We went through the process here, and they lived with us for 10 years, and then they passed away. And it's I think, did everyone get the pictures?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that? And when we had first thought about having a Airbnb, my wife called, I don't know how many times. You want to talk a little bit about that, honey?
Yeah, I called a few times just to see, like, what's the law or whatever, what would we need to do, and at that time, there was no ordinance.
And so they said,
What?
and out of sight, out of mind, and here we are a number of years later, and we were talking to our accountant this spring, and he had brought something up on another matter, so it made us think. And so Randy called the office here, and that's when we started the process there. So, is there any other input? Any questions that we can answer?
Well,
This is all news to us.
yeah, yeah.
All kind of new.
I forgot to add in my little introductory remarks about the public hearing that the applicant normally gets their own separate opportunity to address the planning commission. You don't have that in the agenda this time, but usually we hear from the applicant separately. There isn't anybody else here, but we want to make sure this is not intended to be a back and forth. This is just intended to be the public telling us any opinions that they might have on the application. So let's hold off on asking you any questions at this point.
Very good.
So, are there any other public comments on the application? There's nobody online, I assume. Did we receive anything in writing? Okay, so no written comments. So, second call for public comments. I'm again keeping my ear on the parking lot. I don't hear any screeching tires. There's nobody trying to get in. We want to give, anybody who wants to speak on any public matter like this the opportunity to speak. Last call for public comments on the application. Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and close that back up. I guess let the record show that no other public comments were offered. The one that was offered was from the applicant. So, public hearing on SUP 25-02 is closed at 8:02. And so now, it says commission review of the application, but you've heard from the applicant, so it is open for questions from the commission if any commissioners have questions for the applicant.
So you've been in operation for a bit since your family died. Can you tell us a little bit about what it's been like running it? How often you usually guys get?
The microphone is here, and you're on it.
Oh,
So.
He's been trying to push you up there since he stood up. I could see.
I've been here before.
Can you tell me a little bit just about the business and how it's been?
Well, we've had some pretty great success, to be honest. It's tucked back in the woods, and usually people that come are from the city. So it's very low-key and quiet, and people seem to like that. We really haven't had any trouble with the guests to speak of. Meet a lot of people, and they review us, we review them, and Airbnb takes care of taxes and all kinds of stuff, so it's been, are you laughing? Hi. I talked on the phone several times. And other than that, questions maybe?
I have one question. Do you currently reside at this property, or?
Yes.
You do? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So we're there.
It was a grandmother's suite, Blanche stayed.
Gotcha.
It was a grandmother's suite, basically. And, yeah, he lived with us for 10 years.
And then my husband retired, and we thought, oh, what do we do now, you know? So it was a source of income for us.
I'm a retired minister, and one of the individuals within the congregation said, was a doctor, and he said, you really should think about an Airbnb. And our kids also said that, our 3 older children. And so we were hesitant, just because we didn't know what an Airbnb was and what it, but we started the process with them, and it's a pretty good organization. And we've had, like Randy said, it's been very, very good. As a matter of fact, we have a person coming tomorrow that they were here last year because they lost a member in the family. That's what a lot of people, they grow up in Mount Pleasant, they leave, and they come back for reunions or funerals and things like that. And we've had multiple people repeat, just because it's quiet, see a lot of deer, see a lot of turkey, those types of things. And they're not used to it, So it's been a good experience for them, and it's been a very good experience for us.
Hmm.
And we'd like to continue.
And we like people, so.
I'll say from my side over here, it sounds like you guys are really utilizing space that you have, building a community in there. I think a lot of what we were talking about earlier for board members is worrying about hoarding or grabbing, houses around. It was when people hear of Airbnbs, people
Yes.
coming in and trying to grab other houses and turning into it. Like, you guys are using a space that you've had for your family to accommodate towards building and opening up for other people here. No, it sounds like a great thing.
And if we're not there, like sometimes we have, our other kids live in Florida, South Carolina, we just block it off. So it's not like somebody's not there.
We're always there.
Overseeing.
Right.
So Airbnb boasts that they are a guest favorite with a rating of 5.0 and 224 reviews. So
Wow.
I'd say whatever you're doing, it seems to be going well.
I
Yeah,
think we have our chairs for the new Airbnb commission.
right?
It's been enjoyable.
Yeah.
Is what you have considered one unit?
It is. 25 years ago, we had to have it that way. With the, they didn't want a duplex or anything like that. So we have, my wife is an artist, and so we have a studio. Her studio is right there, and it's locked
And I went
off.
through the process to get it, so.
Yeah, so it's basically one house with a grandmother's suite.
Yeah.
And so that's-
What I meant though by one unit was the part that's the Airbnb, is that one unit? In other words, is it one entity renting it at a time?
Like, would there be multiple rentals? Is it sectioned off for multiple rentals at once, or is it only one rent?
Okay. But it could be, you've got 1, 2, 3, it looks like 3 bedrooms.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it could be like a decent sized family or something like that.
It's usually one family, 2 people. A lot of people, one. They just want to get away, or they have
Yeah.
a conference here at CMU or something like that. They don't want to do the hotel thing,
Hmm.
and but it's usually one family or yeah.
Mhm.
And it's blocked off from our house. We have the unit, and then there's an art gallery and a laundry room. And those rooms are blocked off, so even with the sound, it works well.
It is a log home also, and the walls are 8 inches thick.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
we don't hear them, they don't
They don't
hear
hear
us.
you, you don't
and
hear
it's
anything.
convenient.
Soundproof.
Nice.
Are you a ceramic artist?
No.
Okay.
No, but there is one nearby.
I know. Okay. I
Yeah,
remember
like
I
right
see
down
it.
right down the road on Meridian where the Lutzes
Yes,
live.
yes.
Yeah.
No, picture framing and artwork.
Other questions? Okay, well, you're welcome to have a seat. We're gonna, something else you wanted to
Well,
add?
just if I could say something.
Yeah, please.
When I first started the process of, like, gosh, we have to do something, I first spoke with Rodney. Terrific, encouraging, and upbeat, and I was just very impressed with that. And then somebody came to inspect, help me. Tim.
Yeah.
And he was terrific. Went through the whole place, and gratefully we didn't have to do anything according to him. So
And by the
that
way,
was-
he said this is the best job he's ever had. Yeah. So we got to know him pretty good.
And then Pete was marvelous. He bent
Walked us
over
through.
backwards, and I must have called him 5, 6 times. Came over 3 times just to get everything right, and he did.
Thank you.
Superb job.
Yes. Thank you.
Well, that's warm and fuzzy.
Nice. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And
Appreciate you
if we
coming
do
back.
if we do have further questions, you're not going anywhere, so we'll be able to ask those. But we'll move on to commission commission deliberation and action. So this item is before us. You have the report from Peter starting on page 56 of your packet. It lists the standards for special use permit approval. and for the standard one. And so typically we at least look at each one of those, and commissioners have the opportunity to speak up if they have any concerns. So in terms of doing our due diligence. So again, I'm starting on page 56 of your packet. I'll mention each of the criteria, and any commissioner jump in, please, if you have any concerns at all. Proposed land use is identified in section 3 as a special use in the zoning district. That conforms. The location, design, activities, processes, materials, equipment, and operational conditions of the special use will not be hazardous, detrimental, or injurious to the environment or the public health, safety, or general welfare by reasons of traffic, noise, vibration, smoke, fumes, odors, dust, glare, light, drainage, pollution, or other adverse impacts. Hopefully not. Okay. Special use will be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained in a manner compatible with adjacent uses, the surrounding area, and the intent of the zoning district. Where determined necessary by the Planning Commission, the applicant has provided adequately for any restrictions on hours or days of operation, minimization of noise, and screening improvements or other land use buffers to ensure land use compatibility and minimize adverse impacts. So, I mean, it's a residential use. It's just it's someone else is paying extra to stay there, but it's not doesn't have its own particular impacts really. But any concerns from folks? The special use location and character is consistent with the general principles, goals, objectives, and policies of the adopted master plan. To admit, I didn't pull that and see what that particular location. What is the land use of that location? So this is off of River.
Between Lincoln and Meridian, on the south side of River.
Yeah. How is it closer to Meridian? Okay. So it's probably in that rural preservation area. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to go line by line if you'd like, but I'm also prepared to make a motion if I can.
I understand. You know, commissions change over the years. I've gotten hacked for not doing this, so I just want to make sure I'm pleasing my constituency here.
Feel free.
And then there's we'll finish maybe with this. There's the piece that conforms to section 6.58. So special use conforms to all applicable requirements or standards of this ordinance or other township ordinances. For this use, the following standard 6.58. So the only one that they, at least township staff believes they haven't met yet is this. Well, no, wait a minute. Zoning permit required. Oh, okay. A permit from the zoning administrator. All right.
What number are you looking at, Phil?
Well, it's in number 5.
Okay.
Still on page 56.
Okay.
So short-term rental, they have to get a permit from the zoning.
They actually have, they have to actually get rental certification as well. This is, this will probably become part of our housing licensing program, so there will be an annual inspection.
Yeah, and then
mention
the inspection, yeah.
At the same time, Peter will verify that they're meeting the requirements for the special use permit.
Okay.
That's
okay.
the zoning permit part.
All right, all right.
Can I ask a question about the sidewalk? I thought that in a ag district, wasn't a requirement. Sidewalks are required everywhere?
It's required to be shown on the site plan, and on their site plan, they shows, of course, in our sidewalk policy, you have the items where you can request relief, and they put that right on the plan.
Okay. And that's something you can handle with a minor site plan?
Yes, with
No?
the
Okay.
recent amendment. yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So you all read, and so do any planning commissioners have any concerns with any of the items in the special use permit, the criteria? Anybody?
I guess I'll just say that for this specific application, I don't see any immediate concerns. They seem like they keep the property well maintained, and everything seem, aside from essentially the paperwork that they weren't aware of, everything else conforms. I just want to express my concerns not for this specific application, but for the precedent that it sets for other future applications, and then also to make a note that I didn't do a deep dive, but I just looked in our area, and there are 12 plus listings for Airbnb in this area. I'm sure a lot of those are probably in like Mount Pleasant City, where we don't have jurisdiction, but there's potential for there to be unreported short-term rentals in Union Charter Township that we're not aware of. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, there always is, and that was what, a couple of them did.
What I think what Hayes was saying, in that because it's largely self-reporting, or like we find out about it through the grapevine, there's no way for us to systematically go through and verify these things. So like he was, I guess, insinuating that for all we know, there could be many more short-term rentals in the area that are choosing not to report, choosing to be in violation to save on the costs of applications and certifications. Just throwing my 2 cents in there.
Yeah. Ronnie?
If I may, just to share a little bit, the first two that came up were found because we checked the Airbnb website.
Okay.
If one had not started yet but was listed there, and that was the one that Peter mentioned, ultimately decided not to do it because with the rental inspection they found out they had some pretty major work that needed to be done.
Gotcha. Okay, that's good.
The second one followed the process and received a special use permit. Frank, this one, you guys may have been out of town that week because if dates are blacked out, they don't show up.
Gotcha.
So it may have just been a fluke that we didn't see yours. But anyway, we're not checking it every day or anything like that, but we have.
Okay, that's good.
And there are a number of different, Verbo is another one. There's several different sites that do this sort of thing. I would not be surprised if there were some more that are not, that are operating, that are unaware of these requirements or as you said, have chosen not to follow them. But they will come up. The other way they come up is through our assessor, because the assessor, depending on how the property is used, it can change the percentage of homestead exemption. So that comes in play as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
I suspect if it were more frequent, we would see it in the Community and Economic Development Monthly Report.
Yes, probably.
Okay. I guess I'm not sure what, I mean, if that's going on, that doesn't necessarily affect how we would act on a particular proposal that's brought. But as someone, you or somebody mentioned earlier, if it reached the point where every other house wanted to be a Airbnb, then we'd have, I think, item 4 would come into play, which is the special use consistent with the general principles, goals, objectives, and policies adopted in the master plan. So we would have to lay out some groundwork through the master plan and then act on it. So.
And I think that's going to look a lot differently if you're having an out-of-state commercial buyer versus a family that's
Yeah.
been here for 20 years.
Yeah, although you have to, again, you have to justify that and,
True.
you know, gird yourself for the lawsuits that will follow and all kinds of things. All right. Any other concerns from commissioners? Any other comments, thoughts? Okay, if not, we can have a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the PSUP 25-02 special use permit application for a short-term rental located at 1220 South Eli's Way, parcel number 14-0070-10-002-05, in the northwest quarter of Section 7 and in the AG Agricultural Zoning District, finding that it fully complies with Section 6.58 short-term rental housing and Section 14.3.J standards for special use approval.
Second.
So the motion was made by Olver and it was seconded by Lapp. Is there further discussion? Okay, hearing none, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Bradshaw,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
Squadrito,
Yes.
Lamp,
Yes.
Olver,
Aye.
Waring,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Shingles,
Yes.
Brown.
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So, good luck with that.
I would just like to say hi to Stan Shaney.
Pastor Dan, how are you,
Yeah.
sir? It's been a long time.
Years since I see you.
Yes, it has been.
You're looking just the same.
Good to see you.
Okay, and I won't even rule that out of order. All right. Let's see. Okay, so the next item, which I'm very curious to hear what this all entails, is a discussion of special use permit and public notice requirements for federally regulated gunsmiths.
Thank you. This is actually kind of last minute addition to your agenda. Gunsmiths are in our zoning ordinance. They are in special use in actually pretty much the same districts that the short-term rentals are. Ag district, residential districts. There can also be commercial gunsmiths. We're not really talking about that in a store or.
Can I interrupt you? Did they leave a bag?
Yeah.
Oh.
Thank you for noting that. Being someone who carries one of those regularly, I appreciate when people notice when you forget yours.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you like I chased him down but left the bag behind? You know, forced him to come. Yeah. See.
Well, also, you don't necessarily want to pick up other people's bags because it's.
What we're talking about here are folks that have that need a federal license as a gunsmith, but they're typically operating out of their home, and they may be selling guns at gun shows. They may be repairing guns in their home. They may be selling out of their home to people that come to their home and purchase. But these are they don't have a storefront. They're essentially a type of home occupation. Right now, our ordinance requires a special use permit for that, which means a public hearing process. And we've been working with a gentleman that would like to do this out of his home, and he raised a concern that felt was important to bring to your attention, and that is that these are gunsmiths. They have firearms in their home, and with the requirement for a special use permit, with that public hearing requirement, means that notice goes out not only to all the neighbors within 300 feet, but also notice goes in the newspaper, it's on a website, that they are a gunsmith and have guns in their home. And there was a concern about being a target. And this particular gentleman has experienced this before elsewhere. I have heard the same comment in other communities that have similar requirements for a special use permit. So I just felt it was worth bringing to your attention this evening that this challenge with regards to this particular land use. This is a land use that is federally regulated. They need a license, and they're pretty carefully watched over for that license. They can have a spot inspection. There's a number of requirements they have to follow, and reporting they have to make in terms of what they do. Of course, everything that they have has to be secured in their home, and so they're under a pretty tight grip already as it relates to this license. And so I guess my invitation to you is to consider whether we should make an adjustment in our ordinance to eliminate the special use permit requirement for this particular activity, this particular type of home occupation activity. So with that, I'm happy to answer questions.
Would it just be eliminated altogether, or is there another avenue that could be pursued?
Well, it is really one or the other, because either we require a special use permit, which then requires a public hearing, or we don't. Now, if we don't, they, for example, it would still be a home occupation, so they would still have to follow the rules that apply to home occupation, which limit the number of visits, somewhat the hours of operation, and require that the property look, feel, and function as a home, not as a commercial business. So we have pretty good standards in the ordinance already for that. But there would not be a local permitting process at that point. It would simply be that they would need to follow those requirements. If we receive complaints about a site, then obviously we respond accordingly.
What other like home occupations are there that require a special use permit that you're aware of? Or is this the only one?
Well, our ordinance has a list of home occupations that are simply allowed, and they're things like home offices, an architect, a doctor, a planning consultant. For many years, I've had my own home office. That's my consulting world. Other consultants, beauticians, nail care. I mean, there's a number of things that can be done simply as a home occupation. That doesn't require any action. So that there is a provision in the ordinance basically says that if a proposed home occupation is not on that list that's in the ordinance, it requires a special use permit. So essentially anything else does require it. The gunsmiths are actually listed separately in the ordinance as their own use classification as a special use. So that section that talks about gunsmiths references the home occupation standard, so they're considered part of home occupation, but they're actually called out separately in the ordinance. I think what's the other one? We have medical marijuana caregivers, aren't they in our?
I think that's listed.
Yeah. I think the other one would be a special use permit is medical marijuana caregivers, which is a category under the old 2008 Medical Marijuana Act that it's beyond simply growing your own for your own use in your home, which is just a medical marijuana patient. This caregiver thing is essentially growing for other people, and for a very limited number of other people under very restricted rules. Rules that essentially today mean that there's almost no caregivers out there anymore. But anyway, it's in our ordinance that somebody could do that as a home occupation in the agricultural district with a special use permit.
So right now, the only two that require these are, I guess in both cases, controlled substances. Would it be firearms or?
They're like specifically called out.
Yeah.
But it sounds like there's a nearly infinite number that are not specifically listed as being generally approved that.
No, generally not needing a special approval.
Well, I guess let me rephrase what you were saying. We have a list in our ordinance that does not require any special permit. Then any other occupation not listed is assumed to require a special permit, and then gunsmiths and these caregivers for medical marijuana are on their own must have a special permit.
Right.
Okay.
Let me give you the list here, because actually it's not a bad way to go. Just read it.
Is there any, what is the process for someone wanting to be a gunsmith out of their home if they don't need a special permit? Do they need to come before anybody to identify the business? I mean, in terms of privacy and security, which seems to be the main issue, I'm just wondering how public that process would be anyway. I mean, I appreciate the difference between a needing this special permit, which goes through the public,
Public hearing.
the public hearing and all that.
I believe
I'm just
it-
trying to think of,
What it says in this is that with that special permit requires an address, correct? Is that where their concern comes from? That even though it's something that's primarily done online or at gun shows, that when applying for the permit,
Right, because
the residency needs
but
to be
if
listed.
they apply
which
for a
would-
business, they'd be doing the same thing, and isn't
Sure.
that published in the paper?
No.
No,
Not-
that's not.
Home occupations and home-based limited businesses do not require any public hearing.
They-
Their applications.
Oh, they don't have any application even, okay.
Well, there's an application, but it's just like a building permit. It's applied
Okay.
for and it's approved in-house.
Same,
Okay.
so that would be the same with this instance here, where they're applying for this, because, so the person came to you with concern that they would be a target. And it sounds like you're wondering why, how that would.
Well, I didn't know how public
Yeah,
the
how
other
that would
process
even
was.
become
If the
aware.
other process is all in-house, then that would solve the issue for that particular,
I mean, it's my limited
business.
understanding that, these people require an FFL, federal firearm license, and those FFL licensing, that's a publicly available information, is it not?
I'm sure that right, Freedom Information Act would probably apply to it. No, of course, you'd have to want to go looking for it. You'd
Right.
have to go and ask.
it would be readily available on our website.
I don't know how broad of an ask you could give. I'm not aware of the federal rules related to this, ATF rules for freedom of information and individual licensing. But it's not published in the newspaper or
Okay.
nothing like that. It would be just as any other public record to be requested here at the township, but I'm sure there's some ability to request the record from the ATF. Just, if I may, just give you an idea here on what's allowed. Is allowable uses are home offices for professionals, as I mentioned, personal services, beauty and barber shops, animal grooming, home office for a massage therapist. And that term massage therapist is defined in the ordinance, so we don't get into adult-type businesses. Music, dance, and arts and craft classes, private tutoring for instruction for a maximum of 5 pupils at any given time. That is straight out of the State Zoning Act. Studios and workshops for artists, sculptors, musicians, and photographers. And for weaving, lapidary, jewelry making, cabinetry, woodworking, sewing, tailoring, and similar crafts. Repair services, limited to watches and clocks, small appliances, computers, electronic devices, and similar small devices. And my favorite, a lemonade stand or similar incidental sales activity operated under adult supervision by one or more minor residents of the premises shall be permitted as a temporary home occupation, provided that signage is limited to temporary signs permitted in the zoning district.
I can't put them in the ground, my lemonade stand. I can't.
You just have to have a child with you.
No, that's not a challenge. Make them do the labor, pull it out, kind of.
You may have seen, there've been news articles about lemonade stands being raided, the illegal business and all, we just didn't want to go there, so it's in the ordinance, you can have a lemonade stand. So those are the specific things are allowed, and then the last category is any use not specifically listed may be approved with a special use permit, subject to the requirements of this section and the special use standards.
So a potential solution to what you're identifying is just listing a gunsmith as one of these home occupations.
And what we could do, I think we would do because yes, we wouldn't add it to this list, is to say, subject to a copy of the approved ATF license we provided to the zoning district, or something very simple. Just give us a copy of the license. Typically, this is going to come up anyway because the ATF has a requirement to verify local approval. So we're going to get a form that says, what do you need to know? And so we can then just simply say, all we need is a copy of the license when it's granted.
I think that's reasonable as long as we have some way of having a record, but without making it public broadcasted. I think that's a fair compromise.
I just don't have a lot of knowledge of what this entails. Like, would this person have like a stockpile of firearms in their house that they're selling and trading? I mean, it seems like we're getting into some interesting territory with gun laws. I don't, I understand that it's regulated federally as far as their licensing goes and what they have to go through to get to that point, but are we just saying we're not gonna have any, not overseen in any way, they just are having any knowledge of just a house with a ton of firearms in it? They're being bought and sold. It just
I mean,
seems kind of weird to me.
you got to know the risks when you do that kind of work. I mean, it's part of the job. I'm not to sound callous about it, but I mean, there's a risk that goes along with every job you do, and I think,
I guess I'm thinking more risk to the community or
Yeah.
the neighborhood rather than the individual.
Right, and I'm
wanting to-
going off what you're saying, and I'm
Right.
just saying that if he wants to continue to do this, people need to know.
Right.
But at the same time, he should know that people need to know. So he was saying earlier that
So one of the reasons this came up is because of the concern about public becoming aware and somebody behaving badly and wanting to break into his place and steal things, whether it's steal a gun safe or whatever it might be.
that's what I'm talking about.
And so that then creates potentially a public safety issue as those guns end up in the hands of people that behave badly. By not having the public notice, the notification, the hearing notice, this gunsmith is able to operate quietly. His guns are still in the gun safe. As I said, these are some pretty strict federal requirements related to this license. And is subject to spot inspection. They can show up anytime during what he calls his business hours. Whatever they may be, even if it's an hour a day that he says, I'm going to be available this hour a day to do whatever I'm going to do. They can show up any day and inspect. Frankly, I think it's actually safer to not have the public hearing notice.
Right, that's the opinion that I'm trying to, but I'm saying there's another side of the coin. So when you're protecting the proprietor and his home and his stockpile from the bad guys who could, know where it is and behave badly, you're also not letting a neighborhood or community know that it's next door.
Frankly, right now, anybody can
Yeah,
have a
there's-
stockpile of guns in their home.
It sounds almost like they're having a higher requirement than private gun owners.
Yeah,
Like
a
anyone
private
now-
collector could have hundreds of firearms in their residence, and you would never know unless they shared that information with you.
No inspection, no regulation to how they're stored. I mean, there are some regulations that are coming into effect now on like handguns and locks that have been implemented under the last
But presumably you're
year,
not having
but-
people coming in and out and doing business transactions.
Well, I think this
Food,
specifically
yeah.
carves out not having. Well, I mean, at least this what I'm reading here says that no members of the public are received at the home business location. So this type of thing would be he goes to a public event,
gun show.
receives firearms to repair, work on, or he buys and sells at these shows, but does not receive members of the public into his own home for the purposes of buying and selling.
So the gun sale isn't happening at the home.
As far as our home occupation standard, the home occupation rules do allow for some customer visits to the home. I'm just going to say that from a zoning perspective. Whatever the federal license is, that's federal licensing. But frankly, even if you have people coming to the home, just like anybody would come to anybody's home, this is not a situation of people going in and out of CVS or Walgreens or something like that. It's even in our home occupation standards, it's a few customer visits a day. Very limited activity. The idea is that this continues to look, feel, and function as a home. But even if you have people coming to the home that may be dropping off a gun for repair or purchasing a firearm, they still have to operate in those same safe manner. The licensed gunsmith does. and they have to make sure the customers do too. So this is not something where it creates a safety issue simply because the gunsmith is in that particular home.
Can I ask a question? I'm also struggling with this in the same, I think, much the same way that she is, but the use of the term gunsmith is not, that is to distinguish it from gun dealer?
No, that's simply the term our ordinance uses for, our ordinance uses for basically anything that falls under these federal firearm license rules.
Okay, so it doesn't automatically imply that we're talking about somebody who repairs guns.
Yeah, it could be somebody who repairs. It could also be somebody that solely sells it at gun shows. It could be somebody that sells out of their home and at gun shows.
Yeah. Because I have, I'm looking at this list of allowed uses that you read, and on the one hand, these are the ones that were called out, and do we want to just start? And if we throw gunsmiths in there, why don't we throw everything in there? Why does that become? Why are these the anointed ones? And why would that one be an anointed one? If it were gunsmiths, I could see, because it might fall under repair services. Maybe it even falls under workshops, that sort of thing. If it's just somebody who buys and sells, I'm not really sure why it deserves to be anointed in that list.
Well, right now it's in our ordinance. If we took it out of our ordinance as a separate use, then essentially Peter would have to make an interpretation as to where the gunsmith would fall. And he certainly could find that it falls into a category of repairs or something else. The challenge is even the repair item is fairly specific. So it would be better if we're going to make a change, to add it to the list of allowable uses, that we simply do that, add it in there, rather than delete it from the ordinance and leave it up to the interpretation of the zoning administrator. So that's my recommendation there, is that there's value in being specific on where this falls. The other reason to do it is because, as I said, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, ATF, does contact the zoning administrator to find out what our rules are and what requirements apply. And so if we don't have it in the ordinance, essentially every time we get a call, they have to make that interpretation.
Yeah.
So it's better to have it in there simply to say, oh, it's right here, it's this section, this is the rule.
So my next question is then, why was it not on the original list? Was it just an oversight? Like, what was the purpose in segregating those types of home businesses and these other two types of home businesses?
Lemonade stands were not in the former ordinance, and lemonade stands are not in most home occupation standards. They're there because I put it there. It's one of the items when I came to the township and I saw the draft of the ordinance that was adopted in 2020. I knew about this business with lemonade stands, and I suggested we just add it in there. And it was added into the draft that you saw prior to the public hearing. And it was simply because I recognized that is something that's come up lately. It used to be simply common sense that you don't go after children for running a lemonade stand in their driveway, but unfortunately we don't always live in a common sense world anymore, so it's better to just put it in there and there's no issue. This is a similar item. Now, I will tell you, actually, for the reasons you brought up, people often have concerns. When you talk about guns, people have concerns. People that handle guns regularly, that have guns in their home, they understand, and respect those weapons. I'm not one of those. I have a BB gun. My son actually is a gun collector, and he is remarkably careful. So I know that world, and my children were part of that world when they were young. We did 4-H, and they did stuff with the Sportsman's Club and all that because we wanted them to. But for me, I've rarely fired a gun, and I don't really have any interest in having one. But I don't have fear of it. I don't. But some people do, and for the reasons you said, they are potentially dangerous and mishandled. And I think for that reason, it's fairly common in ordinances that sort of the default position is make gunsmiths a special use. Just bringing to your attention that because it came up, because somebody asked, and has the concern, just bringing to your attention that this is something we might want to consider making a change on.
So we,
And your suggestion would be to move it into the named home occupation items with the stipulation that the ATF certificate be submitted to the township office.
Yeah, that would be my suggestion. And then they would have to follow all those home occupation standards.
Could we also have some language in there to dissuade or prevent the use of or the public coming in and buying? Is like I think what he said here is that Commissioner Squatrito is that, like, yeah, he doesn't have a problem with like somebody repairing the firearms in their home and then going to gun shows and conducting business there, but having members of the public walk in and out, purchasing, buying, selling firearms is potentially abusable. So is there a way that we could put language in that would say that the allowable uses would be for, like, yeah, no public members, or no members of the public, sorry?
We can. It would be the only use there that would have that standard, which is tough. I mean, it looks a bit arbitrary when we say that these others can have a certain number of public coming in. It's a general standard in there that says.
Well, these others aren't potential public safety concerns, though.
I'm not sure that a buyer, whether somebody's bringing a gun for repair or buying a gun, I wouldn't necessarily call them a hazard to their neighbors either. One of the things that I guess to keep in mind is that gun owners are obsessively responsible people when they have, because they have to be, because of concerns. Understandable. Again, these are dangerous weapons when they're misused. But my experience in this, I've not yet met an irresponsible gun owner. Now, I'm not saying there aren't any.
Visit Montcalm County.
You never been to a gun show then?
we turn on the news. I mean,
But what I'm
see
saying to you is
every
that
day.
gun owners are overly responsible with things. And certainly in this circumstance, that federal licensee is not only responsible for themselves, but they're responsible for the behavior of their customers. So they are going to make sure that whoever that customer is coming to their home is going to behave correctly. So there's that element as well. Their license can simply disappear. Beyond whatever we may do in terms of the home occupation requirements. I don't see a value in it from that perspective. But also the other challenge in anything we put in the zoning ordinance, it needs to be enforceable. It needs to be something we can consistently enforce. As I say, with home occupations, we don't require a separate zoning permit or anything like that for home occupation. We used to, but we don't require one because there was simply no need. There was no value. It didn't add value to require a permit before somebody could have their own home office for their consulting business. Everybody that has home occupation, we let them know what the rules are. We've not yet had a circumstance where we needed to tell somebody that they're violating the rules. I have in other communities, as a consultant, had experience with ordinance enforcement related to home occupations. So I know that sometimes it happens, but it has not happened here. But the key really is that when you have a home occupation, whatever the rules are that apply, we need to be able to enforce them. And in this particular case, it's going to be very challenging to be able to enforce that no customer rule. When the federal license may allow for it, first of all, but also when we simply can't park out in front of the driveway and be watching for it. And we can get very, very easily into a position of at least appearing to be arbitrary in our enforcement activities. And that's something I do not want to get into.
We're not making any decisions tonight, I assume.
You don't have to. I was just looking for direction, but certainly don't need to. If you'd like, we can simply include this on next month's agenda. Think about it, and we can chat further. If we can gather up any more information, we'll certainly share it.
How, I mean, based on your knowledge of and experience, you mentioned that what we currently have is I don't know, sort of a default position. How common is what we currently have versus what you're proposing?
Both are common. It generally depends on how comfortable the person writing the ordinance was with gunsmiths.
Yeah.
Because if you have a consultant that's aware of this issue, they're probably going to write into the ordinance to make it a allowable use without a special use permit approval, without a public hearing, and then they're going to explain that to the community. In this particular case, as I said, I came into this process at the end of the ordinance. A draft ordinance was dropped on my desk on my first day, and I had the opportunity to look at it and ultimately to talk with the consultant and say there's a few things we need to tweak.
Yeah.
And it was things like the site plan review process and some other things that needed to be easier to work with. But I was very careful to not touch anything that was a policy of the planning commission. What uses require special use permit approval, which uses are allowed in which zoning districts. I was really looking at process, like site plan process. And so I did not do anything with gunsmiths or a number of other things that are in the ordinance. Simply because you had more than a year of looking at the ordinance, talking about it at the time, and I certainly was not going to substitute my viewpoint for that in that way. This has come up now because somebody's raised it with us, and so it's worth bringing up and talking about. And you may decide not to do anything at all, and that's completely okay. It just makes it a significant concern, safety concern for the applicant, and probably for other applicants who may want the same thing.
Is there additional liability on behalf of the township for action or inaction on the subject?
I wouldn't think so, no. No, we have...
Not putting someone at risk either way.
We do it.
Just one thing that I remember about the federal rules about the ATF is that private individuals don't necessarily need an FFL to conduct limited numbers of transactions. It's entirely possible for a private collector to buy and sell out of their own home without requiring a license basically as a private citizen in very limited circumstances. So that's just simply stating a fact, not a pro or a con either way.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well, yes.
The thing that, I probably shouldn't say this, but the thing that occurs to me, the correspondence you gave us was from 2016 and 2017. Do we know whether we're going to have an ATF a year from now? I mean...
That is a valid point.
Well, I
or that they won't radically change their level of permissiveness?
Yeah.
It is certainly possible. No matter what, whether a federal license is required or not, a gunsmith still requires a special use permit in the township. So even if somebody wants to, even if they no longer need a federal license, they still would have to get that special use permit from us.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't change anything.
Yeah. I do want to say, too, I mean, it's, because I realize people occasionally watch these things. We've had, in my memory, we've had at least one, maybe more, but at least one fellow come here to apply for either a home occupation or a special use permit. And for that purpose, gun collector, wants to be able to make some sales, that type of thing. We approved it. But I don't know, I kind of like the idea that they have to come in and, go through that process. So that's kind of my bias at the moment. I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just had a random thought. We're attacking this from the side of moving gunsmiths into non-special use. Is there any provision to make an exception in the special use process for gunsmiths to maintain their privacy? No. Okay.
If they need a special use permit, they need approval from the planning commission of a special use permit, then the hearing process is required. And the hearing process that we have to follow the state act for notices.
Okay, it's a state, okay. Okay, thank you.
I'd like to think about what provides a safer community. Knowing or not knowing. They obviously are approaching at it that they don't want anybody to know what they're doing. And I'm kind of okay with that. They are subject to all the rules and regulations. They're more official. Any one of us could have 150 weapons in our homes. We would hope that they would all be in safes and properly locked, but we could. I'm looking at it as what provides a safer community in the respect of knowing or not knowing. I don't necessarily, I've got a feeling, but I think that's just something we need to think about.
Well, we're also representatives of our community, so we have to put aside what our personal beliefs are. You know, I might sound like I'm someone who's fearful of guns or doesn't want them in the community. We have guns in our home and we hunt, and that's not the case at all. But I recognize my responsibility to, when we're in this room, to make sure that we're doing what we think the community wants to do and for the best of the community, not just for what we think personally.
It sounds like there's pros and cons to both approaches. Having a special permit use so that we can keep tabs on and curtail, the proliferation of these things and make the community safer versus not having the special use and having the privacy maintained so that there's not this blaring advertisement, I have guns here, please come see me. Both approaches are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to increase the safety of the people in the community. They're just going about it in completely different ways. I'll be honest, I don't know which way is necessarily correct.
Perhaps we should have a public hearing on it.
Well, if we change the ordinance, ultimately we would. If you'd like, we can simply include this on next month's agenda to continue the conversation. See where it might go.
That sound okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It wouldn't hurt to think about it for a month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's the only next step beyond that would be if folks wanted to ask Rodney to present us with proposed language. But if we're not quite there yet, then yeah, you can bring it back as a discussion item next month. I'm not seeing a groundswell for directing you to take that next step.
If any new information comes to light, though.
Well, certainly, if there's something more we can share, we'll certainly share that, but we won't draft any language. And what we shared, what we added to the packet was really just to give you a taste for what these kinds of licensees are doing.
Yeah.
So,
How does the city of Mount Pleasant deal with this?
I don't know. Peter, do you know?
I don't know.
I mean, it might be worth comparing just because, we're
Urban areas, cities tend to have more rules.
Yeah.
We're an interesting place. We have an urban community and we have a rural community.
right.
Sometimes I think a significant part of what we do as a planning commission, what we do as staff, is balance those requirements, balance those competing interests.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of those places where that we need to look at the balance.
Yeah. We're the donut where the inside of the donut is different from the outside of the donut. It's got different frosting on it. All right. Okay, so that will come back to us next month. So next item is under other business. We have a master plan update, which I assume is basically the industrial corridor study.
Yes, this is hot off the presses. This is a project you may recall more than a year ago, much more than a year ago. We started this. It was not supposed to take anywhere near this long. In fact, it was supposed to be finished about this time last year. And through various circumstances, both at my end, because I was out of the office for a good bit of the first quarter of last year, take care of my folks in Florida, but also because of some challenges in the engineering office. This took a much longer period of time to complete, but wanted to share it with you. Really, my update was to let you know that this study was finished, where they did look at the kind of high priority areas of the corridor to look at potential new industrial sites. The final report I felt was excellent. You may find a typo in there, one or two. I was told today that there's one that I missed and the engineer missed. But I found the information for my purposes from looking at it, I found it to be excellent in giving guidance to sort of where we might prioritize additional industrial land, planning for additional industrial land in the community. So I know you may or may not have had a chance to glance at it. I certainly wasn't expecting it to go through this tonight, but I want to make sure you had it and give you an update that with this, the master plan project is going to move faster now. This actually took far more of my time than I ever intended to try to help the engineer get to where he needed to go in terms of the level of data and the depth of the evaluation that we were looking for. And so you should start to see the master plan update and start to see material coming before you on a regular basis from here on as this project moves on ahead towards hopefully at some point an updated draft document. I'm happy to answer your questions about this, but it's largely for your evening reading and enjoyment. Anyway, it's interesting data. I felt it was very, very helpful.
Yes, it has some heft to it.
It does. There is some duplication because what I did ask them to do was to provide a report for each tract of land that they identified. So there's some repetition that you'll notice, where the same information, like proximity to the airport, restricted flight zones and such, is the same, or traffic numbers are the same. That's
And the GFA was the consultant?
Yes, Gordy Fraser and Associates is our time.
Gordy Fraser, okay. Okay. Any immediate questions for Rodney? I mean, obviously, we're going to be working with this for a while, so. Okay. Thank you. And so the other item under other business is just a reminder that tomorrow night is the annual joint boards and commissions meeting, which is at Jamison Hall out off of Pickard, north of Pickard, starting at 6. I do plan to be there, but there's an outside chance I could be slightly late, but I plan to be there. We're on, each of the groups is on the agenda, so I'm prepared to, say whatever. But you all are invited, so if you can make it, feel free to stop by. Typically, those are not usually long meetings. The ones I've been to have been like an hour. So, and last few times they've had food. So,
Nice.
You'll have cookies and water.
Oh, well,
cookies and water.
Cookies and water.
that doesn't
Okay.
count.
I think there was.
Tough budget.
I think there was
Why don't-
cheese last time or something.
Cookies.
Okay, well, cookies can be good. But anyway, if you're free and available, you're welcome to come. So last item, or I guess next last item, is extended public comment. If there's anybody who'd like to address the Planning Commission on any item, whether it's on tonight's agenda or not, you are welcome to do so at this time. Extended public comment is limited to 5 minutes on any issue. It's open at 9:04. And we do not currently have an audience, so we'll go ahead and close that back up. And then the last one is final board comment. Any comments from board members?
Just nice to hear the comments about Rodney and Peter and your approach to community issues and community members. So congratulations on that feedback and thank you for your service.
Yes.
We all see it, but it's nice to get that
Yeah.
acknowledgement from the public.
Yes, thank you. Anything else? Okay, then we've completed our agenda and we'll stand adjourned until our May meeting.